After sewing my X and square, which is easier to see on this side, to close off my elastic loop, I'm going to pull it into my casing and just kind of make it sure that all that elastic is inside. The other thing I want to do is close up this hole. In order to close up this hole, I need my fabric to lay flat. And right now it's kind of scrunched up because the elastic is pulling it. I'm going to take all this excess fabric and I'm going to try and get it elsewhere on my casing so that this little section lays nice and flat. So here I have it laying pretty flat. The next thing I need to do is make sure that my elastic is going to stay out of the way because I don't want to sew on top of my elastic. I want to keep this a loop where the elastic is enclosed in but can still slide around in. So in order to do that, I'm going to just kind of put my fingers down here on my fold and I'm going to push my elastic up till it's up in the top of the fold at the top of the casing. Once it's all the way up there, I will go ahead and put a couple pins in to keep it out of my way as I sew. So I'll put a couple pins here to keep it up. And then I want to pin the bottom section here so you can kind of see, here's my, if I just zoom in a little, maybe you can see this better. My elastic is pinned right about there. So I have all this extra space to sew underneath that. Okay, so my elastic is pinned. It's coming up to this fold here. The next thing I need to do is put some pins in below where my elastic is. So my elastic ends here. I want to put a pin in below that. And I want to make sure my casing is still folded at 1.5 inches. So I'll kind of measure that. That's 1.5 inches there. And I can go ahead and put a little pin in there. And I'll put maybe 2 or 3 pins in. Like so. So I want this to be closed up. And none of these pins go through the elastic because my elastic is clear up here. I know it's hard to see in a video, but trust me, it's up there. Next, I need to sew. So I will just move you up like this so we can see. And I'm going to sew at 1 1/4 inch seam allowance. I don't have my marker there anymore, my masking tape. So what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of masking tape. This one has a little drawing on it, but that'll be fine. And I'm going to put my seam gauge down again. There's my 1 inch, right? And then I want to go over to 1 1/4 inches. I will lay this masking tape down right there. Make it kind of straight, and then I'll lift that out of the way. Double check to make sure that it is 1 1/4 inches. There we go, pretty accurate. And I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see that. But pretty accurate, 1 1/4 inches. Then I'll grab my pinned piece right here. I'm going to start on top of my seam line that I already had, and I'll sew all the way down here and end on top of my seam line so that the casing is entirely enclosed. So I can lower my presser or my needle down and see that it's exactly on the seam line that I already sewed on. So I'll just make sure it's perfect. Lower my presser foot, line everything up with the 1 1/4 inches. I will go forward 3, backwards 3, and then sew down, making sure that my elastic is always out of the way, right? I don't want to be sewing on top of the elastic, just on top of fabric. Take any needles out as I approach them. Pins out. Keep sewing. And then once I'm on top of my seam line that I already sewed, which I'm getting a little bit out of the way, there we go. Now I'm on top of it. My elastic's trying to push me off of it, so that's something to watch out for. Since I'm right up against the elastic, it's trying to push me over that way. So just be aware of that. If you need, you can lift up your presser foot and slide over a little bit. But I'll go ahead and back stitch, and then lift up my presser foot, trim my threads, and then pull out these extra pins. Just double check now that you didn't sew over your elastic at all. So my elastic is still loose. It can move around, but you are done now with your casing and your waistband. You just want to trim any threads and then get checked off.